There's a certain comfort in routine, the kind that wraps around you like a familiar blanket. My mornings were always the same, the soft buzz of my alarm at 6:30, the faint smell of toast drifting from the kitchen, and the sound of Chloe's little feet pattering down the stairs, followed by her bright, innocent laugh. That laugh was my anchor. It reminded me that no matter how exhausting work became, life was still good. Melissa would usually be in the kitchen, her hair tied in that loose bun she'd worn since college, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. For 12 years this was our rhythm, smooth, predictable, and safe. Or so I thought. That Tuesday night started no differently. The table was set neatly, Chloe was in her room finishing homework, and Melissa had cooked her usual roasted chicken with mashed potatoes. But the air felt different, heavy somehow, like something invisible was pressing down on the walls. She barely spoke during dinner, her eyes distant, her fork moving slowly. When she finally set it down, I knew something was wrong. I looked up, waiting for her to speak. Her voice trembled slightly when she said, "Ethan, I think I need some time for myself. Maybe a week away. To clear my head. To find myself again." For a moment I just stared at her. My first instinct was confusion, then guilt. Maybe I'd been working too much, maybe I'd stopped paying attention. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but the words got tangled in my throat. Instead, I nodded slowly, trying to sound supportive. "If you think that's what you need." She looked relieved, almost too relieved, and smiled weakly. That night, she slept facing away from me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. To find myself. It echoed in my head until morning came. The next few days blurred together. She started spending more time out of the house, saying she was preparing for her retreat. Gym bags packed, hair done differently, new perfume that smelled unfamiliar, sharper, bolder. I told myself it was harmless. I wanted to believe that she was just trying to feel better about herself. But something in her eyes had changed. The softness was gone. Her laughter felt practiced. Her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, now never left her hand. Every time I entered the room, she'd tilt the screen slightly away. By Thursday, that quiet doubt in my chest had turned into a steady pulse of unease. I noticed the smallest things, the way she hummed while texting, the late-night showers, the sudden gym sessions that ran 2 hours longer than usual. And yet I said nothing. Because part of me didn't want the truth. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. Chloe was already asleep. Melissa was upstairs packing a small suitcase. She smiled faintly when she saw me in the doorway. "I'm leaving early tomorrow," she said softly. "Just a few days in the mountains. I'll come back refreshed." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. I kissed her forehead and told her to drive safe. Then I went downstairs and sat alone in the living room, the house too quiet. That's when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. At first, I didn't mean to look. It was instinct, a glance. But the message on the screen stopped my breath cold. "Can't wait for our week together, babe. Your husband really is a sucker." The words burned into me, each one cutting deeper than the last. Ryan. The name glowed on the screen like a taunt. Her personal trainer? The one she mentioned offhandedly months ago. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my chest tightening. My hands shook, but I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I just stared, reading the message again and again until the letters blurred. When I finally looked up, I saw our wedding photo on the shelf, the two of us smiling, young, full of promise. I remembered the vows we made, the trust one gave her without question. And in that moment, I realized something inside me had quietly broken. She came downstairs soon after, humming, her phone now in her hand again. "Forgot my charger," she said lightly, not noticing my stillness. I forced a smile, pretending nothing was wrong. I told her I loved her. And she smiled back, unaware that behind my calm eyes, a storm had already begun to rise. That night, as she slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake again, not in confusion this time, but in clarity. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to confront her yet. No shouting, no begging, no drama. If she wanted a week away, she would have it. And I would be there, to see exactly what she found. I didn't sleep that night. My mind ran on autopilot, cold and focused. When the morning sun spilled through the blinds, I got up quietly, showered, and made breakfast like nothing had happened. Melissa moved through the kitchen in her soft gray sweater, hair tied up, pretending everything was normal. She didn't notice how still I was. She kissed my cheek before leaving. "I'll call when I get there," she said. Her voice was sweet, almost rehearsed. I watched her car disappear down the street until the tail lights faded. Then I exhaled slowly. My hands were steady, surprisingly steady. I called my mother-in-law, told her I needed to take care of some work over the weekend, and asked if Chloe could stay with her. She agreed, cheerful as always, unaware that her daughter's marriage was already collapsing. After dropping Chloe off, I drove home, opened my laptop and began piecing things together. Melissa had mentioned her trainer's name once, Ryan Carter. I searched the gym's website. There he was, tan, charming smile, the kind of guy who probably called every woman champ. His profile described him as motivational, driven, and passionate about personal growth. I almost laughed. Passionate indeed. Her messages, the perfume, the new lingerie, it all made sense now. Every late workout wasn't about health. It was about him. My jaw clenched as I stared at the screen. I could have confronted her right then, called her out, destroyed everything in a single explosion. But what would that do? She'd deny it. Cry. Blame stress. No, if this was how she wanted to play it, I'd let her bury herself in her own lies. That afternoon I checked our shared car GPS logs. Something she never realized synced to my phone. Her retreat destination was saved. A cabin just outside Aspen, Colorado. Private, secluded, 2 nights reserved under her name. I almost admired the boldness. So I packed. Just enough for the weekend. My hands didn't shake once. I loaded a camera, a flashlight, a thermos of coffee and left. The road stretched for hours, long silent miles filled with the low hum of tires and my thoughts spiraling between disbelief and anger. Every so often I'd glance at her photo on the dashboard. The woman who'd once laughed under fireworks on our honeymoon now felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I thought about Chloe, how I'd tell her someday that her mother simply lost her way, that none of it was her fault. By the time I reached Aspen, the sky was dark and full of snow. I parked my car half a mile from the cabin and sat there in the freezing air, engine off, breath fogging the windshield. From where I sat, I could see the faint glow of light through the trees. 2 shadows moved across the window, one tall, one familiar. They laughed. The sound carried through the cold air like a knife. I gripped the steering wheel and forced myself to breathe. I wasn't here to break things. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here for the truth. Hours passed. The light inside dimmed then went out. Only silence remained, broken now and then by the wind and the creak of the trees. I stayed awake, sipping cold coffee, staring at that cabin until the first hint of sunrise colored the sky. When the time felt right, I stepped out of the car. The snow crunched beneath my boots. My breath came in clouds as I walked toward the cabin. Each step measured, my heartbeat slow and deliberate. The world around me felt muted, as if it were holding its breath with me. At the door I paused. For a second I almost turned back, not out of mercy but because I knew that once I opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. Then I knocked. The door creaked open and Ryan stood there, shirtless, half awake and utterly confused. His eyes flicked from me to the car behind me then back. Can I help you?" he asked. Before I could speak, Melissa appeared behind him, wearing lingerie I had never seen before, black lace shimmering in the dim morning light. Her face went pale. "Ethan?" she whispered. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just looked at her. "You left your phone unlocked," I said quietly. "I've seen everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. Ryan stepped back awkwardly, muttering something about a mistake. Melissa started crying, reaching out, but I didn't let her speak. I took out my phone and snapped a photo, not to humiliate but to end the lies. Her sobs filled the doorway as I said, calm as ever, "You wanted a week off, Melissa? I'm giving you a lifetime of freedom." Then I turned and walked away, my boots leaving deep tracks in the snow. The wind howled around me but I felt nothing. No anger, no grief, just an empty calm that felt like the eye of a storm. Behind me, her cries grew faint, swallowed by the cold mountain air. And as I reached my car, I knew there was no going back. The man who drove up that mountain wasn't the same one driving away. I didn't know it yet, but that morning in Aspen would be the last time I ever saw her as my wife. The drive back to Texas felt longer than the road itself. I barely noticed the landscapes flashing past, snow, asphalt, silence. Every mile that pulled me farther from that cabin felt like another layer of my old life peeling away. By the time I crossed into Texas again, I wasn't Ethan the husband anymore. I was just a man with proof. Proof of betrayal, proof of the end. I didn't rush into anything that first night back. Instead, I parked outside the house and sat there for a while, staring at the front door. The lights were still off, the room still untouched, the air inside that home still pretending nothing had happened. I walked in quietly, the way you enter a place of mourning. Everything looked the same. Chloe's drawings on the fridge, Melissa's perfume still lingering in the hallway. Yet everything felt wrong, hollow. I placed the photo of the cabin on the table and just looked at it. Not out of anger, but out of disbelief that the woman I once held through every hardship had become the stranger in that picture. The silence was almost unbearable. The next morning I called my lawyer. His name was David Pierce, an old friend from college. I didn't explain much at first, only said I needed to file for divorce. When he asked why, I sent him the evidence, screenshots, location logs, the photo. He was silent for a few seconds before saying quietly, "You'll win this easily, Ethan." "I'm sorry." Winning. The word felt strange. There was no victory in this. Just loss rearranged into paperwork. Over the next few weeks, my life became a blur of signatures, affidavits, and court appointments. Melissa returned from her retreat, with a rehearsed apology and a face full of guilt. She cried, said it was a mistake, said she'd lost herself. I listened without expression. There was nothing left to fix. She begged to talk privately one afternoon, her voice trembling as she stood in our kitchen. The same kitchen where she once promised forever. "Ethan, please. I don't even know why I did it." Ryan meant nothing. I looked at her for a long moment. "You meant everything to me," I said finally. "That's the difference." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands, but the sound barely reached me. My heart had gone quiet. When I left the room, she didn't follow. The court process was swift. David handled most of it. The evidence was clear, and when the hearing came, I sat there in Travis County Court, watching Melissa avoid my eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically but in spirit. The judge reviewed everything, then granted me full custody of Chloe. Melissa's face crumpled, tears streaking down her cheeks. When the gavel struck, I felt no satisfaction. Just relief. A clean, cold relief that this long, twisted nightmare was finally ending. Outside the courthouse, the Texas air felt warmer than usual. I remember standing there, briefcase in hand, watching people pass by, strangers with their own stories, their own small heartbreaks. I wondered how many of them wore the same mask I used to wear. Back home, Chloe ran into my arms as soon as I walked through the door. Her small voice muffled against my chest as she asked, "Is Mommy coming back soon?" I hesitated, then answered softly, "Not for a while, sweetheart." She didn't understand, and maybe that was for the best. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the porch with a beer in hand, staring at the Texas stars. They seemed indifferent, countless tiny witnesses to every human promise ever broken. I thought about Melissa somewhere out there, alone, probably realizing what she'd lost. Word spread fast. Her nutrition business, the one she'd built from home, started losing clients after rumors about her affair surfaced. Ryan, from what I heard, had been fired from the gym and disappeared from town. Even her mother, the woman who once adored me, stopped defending her. But I didn't gloat. I didn't speak ill of her to anyone. Because when someone destroys their own life, your silence says more than vengeance ever could. A few months later, my lawyer called to confirm the finalization. The divorce was official. The house, the accounts, everything divided cleanly. Melissa kept the car, I kept the home. The irony wasn't lost on me, she'd left to find herself, and I was the one who ended up truly doing it. That night, as I closed the last envelope of court documents, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. The quiet kind that fills the spaces where pain used to live. And in that stillness, for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe again. Grief is strange. It doesn't arrive all at once like thunder. It seeps in quietly, filling the corners of your life when you're not paying attention. After the divorce, I thought I'd feel lighter, free even. But freedom, I learned, can feel just as heavy as love once did. Days turned into weeks. Mornings began with Chloe's laughter, which was the only sound that made the house feel alive again. I'd pack her lunch, drop her off at school, then head to work at the logistics firm in downtown Austin. My coworkers, kind as they were, didn't ask questions. They saw the ring gone from my hand and the silence in my eyes, and they knew. At night, when Chloe was asleep, I'd walk through the house like a ghost, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories that refused to fade. Melissa's perfume still lingered faintly in our bedroom. I'd catch myself looking at her side of the closet, half empty, like a scar that never quite healed. But I didn't hate her. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Hate takes energy, and I had none left to give. Instead, I focused on rebuilding, slowly, methodically. Therapy helped. My therapist, Dr. Hannah Reed, told me something that stuck with me. You can't rebuild the same house, Ethan. You have to build a new one, even if it stands on the same ground. So I started with small things. I took down the old photos and replaced them with new ones, just me and Chloe. Trips to the park, her first school recital, her toothless smile after losing a baby tooth. Each picture was a brick in that new house Hannah talked about. Still, some nights the loneliness hit harder than I expected. I catch myself scrolling through old messages, reading words that once meant everything but now felt like echoes from another lifetime. I'd remember the way Melissa laughed when we first met, the way she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while dinner simmered on the stove. It was painful but also grounding, a reminder that love, no matter how it ends, still once existed. Then came the promotion. My boss called me into his office one Monday morning, said my work over the past year had been exceptional. "We want you to lead the new regional operations team," he said. It was a big step. More responsibility, higher pay, longer hours. I accepted without hesitation. Work became my refuge, a place where things still made sense. But life has a strange way of sneaking light back in when you least expect it. For me, that light came through Chloe's school. One afternoon, I attended a parent event, crafts and reading games. That's when I met Rachel. She was Chloe's teacher, early 30s, with chestnut hair and the kind of eyes that looked like they'd seen pain but learned to smile anyway. She greeted me with that smile, warm, steady, without pity. "Chloe talks about you all the time," she said. "Says you make the best pancakes." I laughed, probably for the first time in months. "She's biased," I replied. We talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, but her presence felt calm. There was no judgment in her gaze, no curiosity about my scars. Just kindness. Over the next few weeks, we crossed paths more often. School pickups, small talk about homework, quick smiles in the hallway. I didn't think much of it at first. But one Friday, Chloe handed me a handmade card that said, "Thank you, Miss Rachel," in big, colorful letters. Inside was a note. "Your daughter is wonderful. You're doing a great job, Mr. Walker." That night, I sat on the porch holding that card, feeling something unfamiliar, warmth, maybe even hope. It scared me a little. I wasn't sure if I was ready to feel again. But Rachel never forced anything. She just showed up, in small, gentle ways. When I dropped Chloe off, she'd ask if I was eating well. When I forgot a parent form, she'd smile and say, "You're doing your best. That's enough." Somewhere between those small exchanges, I realized I was smiling more. The weight I'd carried for so long had started to lift, one day at a time. And though I didn't know it yet, Rachel would soon become the bridge between the man I was, and the man I was still learning to be. For the first time since that night in Aspen, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was life after heartbreak. It's strange how healing doesn't announce itself. One day you just wake up and realize the pain isn't the first thing you feel anymore. The house doesn't feel haunted, the silence doesn't echo, and your reflection in the mirror looks a little less tired. That's what happened to me. Months had passed since the divorce was finalized, and the pieces of my life had slowly begun to fit together again. Not like before, but in a new way, imperfect yet peaceful. I'd stopped expecting things to go back to how they were. I started learning to live with what remained. Chloe and I developed our own rhythm. Saturday mornings became pancake day. We'd blast country music while mixing batter, laughing at the mess we made. Sometimes Rachel would join us, her hair tied up, her laughter easy and real. Watching her and Chloe together made something in me soften, that guarded, wounded part of my heart that had been locked away for so long. One evening after dinner, we all sat outside watching the Texas sunset, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink, cicadas humming in the distance. Rachel turned to me and said, "You know, you're different when you smile. Lighter." I looked at her, unsure how to respond. "Haven't had much to smile about lately." She tilted her head, eyes warm. "Maybe that's changing." And she was right. It was changing. We didn't rush into anything romantic. It started with friendship, shared coffee, late-night talks about books, movies, and life. She never asked about Melissa directly, but one night I found myself telling her everything. The messages. The cabin. The moment I walked away. I spoke quietly without bitterness, and when I finished, she didn't try to fill the silence. She just reached out, placed her hand over mine, and said softly, "You didn't lose yourself, Ethan. You just gave too much of you to someone who stopped seeing your worth." Something inside me broke and healed at the same time. That night, after she left, I sat alone on the porch watching the stars again. The same stars I'd looked at months ago after everything fell apart. Only this time they didn't feel cold. They looked like witnesses to something beginning again. A few weeks later, I took Chloe to the park. She ran ahead with Rachel, her laughter ringing through the air. I took a picture, not because it was a perfect moment, but because it was real. No lies, no hidden messages, no pretenses. Just life, simple and honest. Later that night, I posted that photo. I didn't think much of it until I saw Melissa's name appear in the seen by list. She hadn't reached out since the court hearing, but now she had seen it, Me, Chloe, and Rachel under the Texas sun. I imagined her scrolling through it in silence, realizing what she'd thrown away. Not out of spite, but as a final truth, that I had found peace in the very life she once took for granted. Sometimes I still think about her. Not with anger, but with a quiet kind of forgiveness. Because without that betrayal, I might never have learned what real freedom meant. Freedom isn't walking away from love. It's walking back to yourself. I tucked Chloe into bed that night, kissed her forehead, and turned off the light. From her room, I could hear the faint hum of Rachel's laughter downstairs, blending with the soft music playing in the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man who'd been broken. I felt like a man who'd survived, rebuilt, and finally come home. And as I stood there in the warm, golden quiet of my new life, I realized the storm had passed. What remained wasn't loss. It was peace.